I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. All right. Happy Thursday, guys. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guest tonight is Mo, and Mo is an Iranian immigrant, and he's going to talk tonight about the protest and some of the conflict that's been happening in Iran. So, Mo, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, giving me this platform to an actual Iranian voice to talk about what's happening back in my country. Yeah, my name is Mo. To be, super transparent, my full name is Mohsen. Mohsen, and I was born and raised in Iran. I was there until I was 13 years old. I still have family there. My mom's there. I have super close relatives, my old classmates, my friends. They're all still back in Iran. So I have a really personal connection to Iran still to this day. It's still what I call home.
Oh, I think you froze, Mo. Let me give it just a second. But while Mo's getting that worked out, I do want to start with this article here, because for those who are not aware, yes, there are protests that have been happening in Iran. And I didn't want to talk about this story until I had someone on that actually knows more about the culture and the history. So Mo has actually been a part of another panel that we've done on RBN before. But this article here in particular, now this is from The Guardian, and it says, why are Americans ignoring the protest in Iran? So this is pretty big deal here. I'm going to make this a little bit larger. So it goes on to say, it's been more than 2 months since 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, arrested by Iran's so-called guidance patrol for incorrectly wearing her hijab, died in police custody. The official report blamed her death on heart failure, but eyewitnesses and her family insist that she was so severely beaten that she suffered a fatal brain injury. Since then, protests have raged across Iran despite the brutality of the government's response. Over 400 people have been killed. An unknown number of journalists and demonstrators have been imprisoned or disappeared. Hundreds have been blinded by rubber bullets and metal pellets fired into crowds of protesters. No worries, Mo. Popular athlete, soccer star Voria, and champion climber Elnaz have been detained for criticizing or appearing to criticize the government. Mm-hmm. So I want to get your take on this, Mo, about the protests. Now, I mentioned the 22-year-old woman who died in police custody because she was not wearing her hijab correctly. Yes. Can you explain to people what is the significance of this culturally?
Yeah, absolutely. So go back to history. The hijab became a compulsory in Iran in 1979 when Ayatollah Khomeini took over. Initially, he ran on free hijab, like everyone can do whatever they want. But only a couple of days after he took power, hijab became compulsory, and almost immediately there was protests on the streets. So the anti-hijab protests in Iran date back to 1979. So it got worse, I would say back in 2008, 2007, maybe, when the regime introduced something called the morality police. The morality police are these police vans that just patrol the streets. And if they see a woman not wearing her hijab properly enough, they arrest her. They beat her. Sometimes, a lot of times, they beat her inside the van. Unfortunately, that's what happened to Mahsa. That's why she died. And it's such a arbitrary way that they get to decide what is a proper hijab. So you cannot be showing like too much hair. Basically, your sleeves cannot be rolled too much up. The pants of your ankles shouldn't be too much up. If you're a woman only, initially they did have some laws for men too. Your hair can't be too stylish, stuff like that. When morality police first came around, but it is vast majority of it is just to target women.
And what is the significance of this, Mo? Like, what are the reasons for the rules?
Honestly, I would say it's the same as any other regime that was to control its people. Hi, JB. Especially it comes down to controlling women, marginalized communities, ethnic minorities, which I would love to get around to later. I mean, even in our country, there's a lot that is happening to control women and marginalized communities. That's how a lot of these regimes hold on to power, is by suppressing people who are marginalized, just like women. And this is just one of those things that is the hijab law is one of those things that is a pillar to this regime. So that's why they've been talking barely about maybe reforms, but it's not one of those things that they can just say, oh, there are millions of people protesting, so we can change this law. So it hasn't even been like an official discussion to get rid of the hijab law.
Okay, it says here Iran's Revolutionary Guards have begun targeting children. At least
Mhm,
58 young Iranians have been murdered, 5 of them within one recent week. The government
mhm,
seems to believe that terror for one's children is the most effective way to keep dissidents at home and off the streets. Uh,
mhm.
what's your take on, and I asked this, Mo, because we never always know with mainstream media what's
Oh yeah.
really happening. um you do still have family members back home. How do most people feel about what happened to this woman in particular, and what are people in Iran asking for?
Perfect question. Yeah, so to get to talk about the mainstream media's coverage of Iran, it has been really frustrating for all Iranians, whether it's Fox, CNN, and MSNBC, because they only cover the political side of the news. They don't cover the human side of the news, which is what Iranians want to talk about, especially because the regime does a lot of internet blackouts to like literally silence the news coming out. So they block internet access, they block certain sites, and the only thing the people in Iran are asking is for their voice to be.
For their voice to be heard. Okay. um while Mo is going to fix his internet, but while he does that, I do also have a video here because Mo sent me a couple of videos that I do want to play as well. Um, because some people have spoken out about this, some people have not. I want to show this video here first from Claire Daly. Let me go ahead and pull this up because this one, let me share this. While we wait for Mo really quick, let me go ahead and share this video here from Claire Daly. I want you to hear what she had to say about this.
Of course, the people of Iran have a right to push for change in their own country, and violent crackdown against them is wrong. But the conversation in here is always about what we should do rather than what we shouldn't do and what we should undo. Because look at where that attitude has got us. Hardliners here have nurtured hardliners there. These protests are organic and legitimate. I don't believe they're a Western plot, but I also don't doubt that there are some bad faith actors, and that shouldn't surprise us. There are also deep-seated reasons why Iran, a country under existential threat, is hyper-vigilant about threats to its sovereignty. But nothing the West is doing is helping that situation. Biden vying, we're going to free Iran, is not helping any Iranian. It's the worst possible thing to say. It's directly putting civilians in the firing line and hyping the external threat narrative. How have sanctions helped? They've created widespread misery and crackdown has gotten harder. Draw the conclusion this isn't working. So what can we do? Relieve the pressure, drop the sanctions, pursue dialogue, not regime change. Get it into your head. Iranians are protesting not for EU strategic interests. They're protesting for their own future. It should be left to them to decide it.
Thank you.
So that's something when Mo comes back that I do want to ask him about the regime change issue, if that's what people actually want. But another thing they mention here in this article, it says, yet much of this may come as a surprise to the average American without a particular interest in or curiosity about Iran. Coverage of the uprising has been notably sporadic. We search our screens and front pages mostly in vain. Watching the evening news, we wait for the brief clip from Tehran that follows celebrity gossip or the record-breaking snowstorm. It takes perseverance to seek out the latest updates on websites such as Human Rights Watch. It goes on to say, a 24 November New York Times article headlined, United States enters new era of direct confrontation with Iran, made it clear that these confrontations will have more to do Iran's nuclear they missed a word here. Will have more to do with Iran's nuclear program than with the current protests. Demonstrations of sympathy here have been organized by Iranian artists and activists in exile, while U.S. politicians have largely remained silent. And this is another issue I've noticed as well. You don't really hear politicians talking about what's happening in Iran. It wouldn't be the only country. They've been pretty silent on Haiti as well. And we've talked about that. But that's what this article here is pointing out. Like, why isn't anybody talking about it? Why aren't you hearing from politicians about this particular issue? So that's something to note as well. I think I saw a couple of comments here about this in the chat. I just want to go to some of the comments really quick. Juliet said, I've seen self-proclaimed Iranians on social media pro-sanctions. I find that interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Meow says, Sabby, we should be suspicious of some of the protesters. They might be influenced by the U.S. government. That's a good point. Yeah, I know. I'm waiting for, we'll see if Mo can come back, but there's another video I want to show you as well while we wait for Mo. And this is from Roger Waters. So let's hear what Roger Waters had to say. Pull this up here. And we'll share here.
Yes, there's what I've been doing this morning is I've been checking up on what's actually going on in Iran now, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And what's going on is this: there's a short film here of people burning posters.
Because many of my sister in Iran,
and young women and young men cutting their hair off in protest at what's going on there. And what's going on there is that there are huge protests, as we know. And I responded to this a few days ago. When I responded, I was in San Francisco, and I sent a little video complaining to the Ayatollahs about the murder of this lady. Last night, we did a gig in San Francisco, and right in front of me, when I was singing on one side of the stage, was a young woman, and she was holding this up. Well, we all know who this young woman is. This is the young woman who was beaten to death by the religious police in Tehran about 10 days ago now.
I just want to add, I find it rather disgusting that the politicians are not speaking about this. It's really disgusting. Whether you consider them to be an ally or not, it's pretty gross that they're not even talking about it. They're not even mentioning it.
Mahsa Amini. So she has become a symbol. Her death is the reason that there are demonstrations going on in Tehran right now, which I support and which everybody should be supporting. They have a weird political system in Iran, and I don't want to knock the whole country because you can't tar them all with the same brush. But the idea of one religious leader deciding absolutely everything is pretty old-fashioned these days. I'm glad the young woman brought this to my show last night. There was a group of 5 or 6 young Iranian people in the front row. So there you are, girl. Yes, we do support you, and we do support all those young people who are protesting in Tehran. They need to listen to the voices of these people. You cannot tell people how to dress anymore. This is now the 21st century. We are not living in the 11th or 12th century. People have to be allowed their voice and allowed their freedom. And so, Mahsa Amini, we will never forget you. We haven't forgotten Neda Aga Sultan, and we will never forget Mahsa either. That's all I have to say this sad Sunday morning.
All right, Mo is back. Okay, Mo, quick question that came through. Are
Sure.
people in Iran asking for regime change? Do they want that?
Yes, so that's a very good question. And I'll be very clear. People in Iran are absolutely asking for regime change, but a regime change that is up to them. You know, they don't want any interference when it comes to the regime change from any Western governments. Most importantly, because they are victims of U.S. imperialism. You know, we've seen the effects of U.S. interference in Iran before. You know, there was in 1953 there was a CIA coup that overthrew a democratically elected prime minister we had called Mohammad Mossadegh, and he was overthrown by the CIA and by the British because he wanted to nationalize our oil. And then in 1979, even when Khomeini came in power, he had a lot of backing from the US. In 1980 to 1988, when Iran was at war with Iraq, the US was providing Saddam with weapons, with sarin gas, mustard gas. So he may not have had weapons of mass destruction when the US invaded Iraq, but he surely had when Iraq was invading Iran, and that it was provided, those weapons were provided to Saddam by the US. So there's a lot of real pain that Iranians have from real life experience when it comes to US meddling in their country. So yes, they are fighting right now for a regime change, but they don't want any Western government to have anything to do with it.
How do you think that would work? And the reason why I ask is because we've seen the history of what happens with like US intervention and regime changes. And also, too, another thing we just mentioned is that the politicians, like US politicians, aren't even talking about this. Why do you think that is?
So they are, but very little. Actually, Obama just recently came out and he said he regrets not supporting the Iranian protests back in 2009. You know, Roger Waters just mentioned the name Neda Aga Sultan. She died during the 2009 protests. And he said he didn't support the protests back then because the regime, he was worried, he said he was worried the regime would use Obama's support for Iranians as a means to crack down on the protests harder. Now, whether Obama meant that or not, that is the case regardless. So right now, this current round of protests in Iran is 100% grassroots. You know, it's a natural uprising from decades of frustration. Regardless, the regime uses these tactics and calls these people they're arresting foreign assets to crack down on the protests harder. So actually, a couple of weeks ago, Biden just randomly threw out a comment at one of his rallies. He said, "We are going to free Iran." No, I mean the Iranian people are going to free themselves. That's what he said. So
Mm.
whether he meant it, or whether it was a slip of the tongue, or whether it was just one of those moments when he said the quiet part out loud, it doesn't matter, because almost like 30 minutes after he said it, the regime inside Iran ran with it. It was like, look, this is Biden. He's coming to, he's supporting the protest. This is proof. And the crackdown on Iranian protesters got way, way worse. Claire Daly just mentioned that comment, and she said, it is literally the worst thing you can say, which is absolutely true. So as a result of Biden's comments, like 100% as a direct result of Biden's, that one sentence when he said, we are going to free Iran, more people have died, more people have suffered by the regime. So that may be the big reason why, on a major part, they are quiet about the Iran protests. But honestly, there are also a lot of clues that shows that Western governments are kind of trying to save this current regime, because even though there are like sanctions directly put on Iran, Iran is still selling oil to the US through like third parties. Iran is still like dealing with a lot of these countries, not just on oil, like on many other areas. Like take Canada, for example, right? Justin Trudeau keeps talking that he supports the protests in Iran. He stands with the people of Iran. But he is genuinely right now one of the most hated faces in Iran, because especially in Canada, a lot of these IRGC, like Revolutionary Guard members, the families of the Ayatollahs are going to Canada, and they are just living in luxury in Canada. And the reason that is because Canada has a thing called startup visa, and it is for entrepreneurs, right? And the only way you can get that startup visa is by proving to the Canadian government you can make them $200,000. So the daughter of the former chief of morality police is currently living in luxury in Canada. Ayatollah Khamenei's son has one of those visas. Like a lot of these Revolutionary Guards families are just, not just Canada, in America too, and in France too, those three major countries. Which kind of brings me to another point, which is sanctions. Both Trudeau and Biden are calling the sanctions on Iran targeted sanctions, which is very funny, because they are not targeting the people, like I just said, especially Canada. They are not targeting, they are targeting the people. They are not targeting the ones in power. I think it was John Bolton from the previous administration who literally said, like openly, the point of the sanctions is to squeeze people so hard that they are almost like starving. Now, this current administration has kept the exact same sanctions and added more, but now they are called targeted sanctions. It just has a new fancy word. And sanctions never, ever hurt the people in power. Ayatollah Khamenei, the Revolutionary Guards, which control 60% of Iran's economy, are not getting hurt by these sanctions. It's only the people, I have a lot of people asking me, how can I help the people inside Iran? Well, other than, talking about them, other than holding Western governments accountable for supporting the regime in some ways, there is no viable way to, for example, send them money. There is no Cash App, there is no Venmo, there is no PayPal in Iran because of sanctions.
That's what I was going to ask, if there was a way that people could help them monetarily, but no, they can't.
No, it's really difficult. So there is one organization called HENGA, HEGAW, and they are a Kurdish independent organization. They are great. They are finally, after 2 months, they figured out a way to send them money, and they are saying to only the Kurdish regions in Iran, because it is a small organization. But they are saying they can redistribute that money to the Kurdish regions in Iran, specifically for the people who have been injured, whether it's like police violence, being shot, the people in hospitals. And I just saw that like literally yesterday. Up until now, there was like zero way to help monetarily people inside Iran, which is heartbreaking, because like, again, just go back to Canada. Justin Trudeau, the only sanctions he imposed on these Revolutionary Guard members is that they cannot enter Canada. And not, by the way, not on all of them, only like on 10,000 of Revolutionary Guard members can no longer enter Canada. Now, meanwhile, in Iran, workers are doing a general strike. They've been doing a general strike for more than a month now, right? And what the people of Iran have been asking is that Trudeau can freeze the accounts of the Revolutionary Guard members in Canada, by designating them as a terrorist organization. Now, Justin Trudeau is refusing to do that. As he goes out and says he stands with the people of Iran and all of that, he's refusing to do that because obviously freezing the accounts of Revolutionary Guard members in Canada would mean less money for Canada. So that's like one big ask we can ask Western governments. There is a way to help people inside Iran if we get rid of sanctions. And these sanctions are just for show. They are saying they just say that they are targeting the regime, like they just say they stand with the people of Iran. In reality, it is the exact opposite.
Is there any accountability, or do you feel there will be any accountability for the police officers that beat the 22-year-old young woman, Mahsa Amini? Is there going to be any accountability there for the police?
Zero. No, no, absolutely not. Especially not from this regime, not as long as this regime is in power. So that is a really good question. But a lot of these police officers are above the law. So there are a few different security forces or police forces in Iran. One is the regular police, one is the morality police, and the Revolutionary Guard members, which is a branch of the military. Now, there is also another plainclothes force called the Basiji force. They are like above all of them. They are plainclothes. They are like, if you watch the videos from Iran, they're just going to streets shooting at random people, like without any repercussions. Like they are above the law and everything. And as far as no officer has been charged with killing Mahsa Amini, the regime actually is trying to say that Mahsa had a disease herself. Like at first they were saying she had heart problems. Then they were saying she had a brain aneurysm. But when Mahsa was admitted to the hospital, protests started breaking out almost immediately. So then the hospital put out a statement on their online that said the reason. So when Mahsa was admitted to the hospital, she almost immediately went into a coma for 3 days. And the hospital put out a statement that it was directly because of repeated blows to the head, which came from baton heads to her head. And she had then a brain aneurysm, and she passed away 3 days later on December 16th. Now the regime is trying to change that narrative. They put out a video of Mahsa walking after she was arrested, and then she falls. And they are showing that video of her falling as evidence that Mahsa already had health problems. But the video is coming after her arrest. She fell because of the blows to the head. So that's the narrative the regime is going with. So there is no accountability because they are saying Mahsa died on her own. They've done this on so many other of these protesters too. We talked about the children being killed. Two of the names that in Iran are now viral. Both of them are 16-year-old girls. One of them is called Nika Shakarmi. The other one is Sarina Ismailzadeh. Both of them also died with repeated blows to the head. And for both of them, the regime said they just committed suicide, which again, if you go into the details of the medical reports, doesn't make any sense because none of them had like bruises all over their bodies. They just had bruises on their heads,
Right.
So yeah, there is no accountability. They are doing whatever they want, and they're just changing the narrative because they control a lot of this. And sorry, I'm rambling, but just to keep going on at how much of the narrative they control without facing any consequences, right? Currently, they've arrested more than 18,000 people, right? And they've officially, the Iran judiciary system has sentenced 6 of these protesters to death. Now, their crime that they are being, charged with is called waging war against God. That is like literally what it is called. It's just such an arbitrary title that they can attach to anything or anyone. So one of these death sentences, for example, is a Kurdish rapper. His name is Salman Yassin. So then the judiciary system inside Iran is arguing that through his rap songs, encouraging protests, that he was spreading propaganda against God, and that is waging war against God. So now he has been sentenced to death.
What?
Exactly. That's how it is. So the English translation is either waging war against God or enmity against God, which is just something they can just attach to anyone. Another crime that they are being charged with that has a death penalty. So 15 protesters are in. They haven't been, charged to basically sentenced to execution yet, but 15 protesters have been charged with corruption on Earth. That's the crime's name, and it usually has a death penalty. So officially, those 15 more protesters have not been sentenced to death yet. But this all goes back to that question of accountability, and the answer to that is there is no accountability because they make up the rules.
One of the questions I have, because I'm thinking about different types of regime change that we've had in the past, right?
Mhm.
And one of the most recent ones that I remember very well was the overthrow of Saddam Hussein.
Mhm.
And this is the question that I have. I remember when the US government, and this goes back to when I was little, they were trying to get rid of Saddam Hussein. So this went on for years. I remember George Bush Sr. saying that we got to get rid, he's got to go.
Mhm.
And it wasn't him that did it, but eventually it did happen under his son,
Mhm.
George W. Bush. I remember him
Right.
coming on TV and saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, we got him." Remember
Mhm.
that when they said that he had
I
weapons of
do.
mass destruction? Right. So after Saddam was removed, then ISIS came about.
Mhm.
And the fear that some people may have is that when you do have regime change, sometimes it may bring about the next group or the next leadership or the next group that it brings about may actually be worse than the people that were there before. And I want to get your take on that in reference to Iran. I mean, obviously the things that I've read and what I'm hearing from you as well, like this is horrific. This is horrible. Is
Mhm.
there any type of fear or concern that whoever comes in next through this regime change, that things could be worse, or are people more hopeful that it will be better?
People are all definitely more hopeful that it will be better because honestly, right now the vibe inside Iran is a vibe of total desperation. They cannot imagine this getting any worse. All the situations are described. So currently, the death toll in Iran, just from the protests, is more than 460. In the article it mentioned 58 of them are children. It's actually by now it's 62 of them. 62 children under the age of 18 have been killed. But that fear, honestly, is always there. It's just now it's being overpowered by that hope of a better regime change. That fear is there because it has already happened in Iran twice. I previously mentioned, Muhammad Mossadegh was overthrown. The Shah took over. He was worse. The Shah took over and he was overthrown. And then now we have the extremist clergies, which are now people feel like this current regime is way worse than the previous one. So it has already happened in Iran, the regime change being a lot worse than what they had experienced. So they are fully aware of that because they've lived through all of that. It's just right now they don't see any other way. They don't see any way, especially because the population in Iran are mostly young kids. I think it's like 60% of them that are under the age of 30 years old. And they just don't see any future for themselves under this current regime. It's not just about the hijab law. Like I said, a lot of Iran's resources goes towards their own military and the revolutionary guards, about 60% of it. And Iranians have actually been protesting the inflation prices for like more than a decade now. These brand of protests are just the latest that are breaking out. It's not just one. It's not just the death of Mahsa Amini that has led to this. It was definitely the camel that broke the straw that broke the camel's back. But this, I would say, sense of desperation has been in Iran for a while. It's one of the reasons my mom insisted I leave Iran, because she also saw no future for me there. I didn't want to leave, to be honest, because I wanted to stay with my mom. But I was only 13 years old, and she kind of convinced me to leave. Which I still miss her. I still miss my home, but in a way, I see what she meant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had two students, and I remember this very well because they were the only two students that I had that were able to actually get here in time for the semester to start, that
Mhm.
were from Iran. And I remember it was like a couple of days before orientation. And at that point, I didn't even know if they were going to make it here because the US government, like they had so much struggle trying to get the student visa. It's harder for those who don't know or not aware. It's harder for certain countries for students to get that student visa. They can have all the documentation that they need, but depending on where they're coming from, it can be more difficult. But they did, in fact, end up making it. They did not return back home, but they were PhD students. So they actually just recently graduated. So it's been a many years. But do you worry, like, for example, if you wanted to go home right now and visit, would you be able to do that? And if so, would you be able to return back to the US without difficulty?
No. So Iran has a mandatory military period. After you turn 18, you have to serve in the military for 18 months, and it's mandatory. So I left Iran before I was 18. So if I go back there now, they will, at the airport, they will catch me, and they're like, okay, you got to serve your 18 months military service. So the simple answer to that is no. You can get off of it by paying them a lot of money, which I'm not that rich to pay off my military services, basically. But honestly, right now, I'm doing my best to get my mom over here. Me and my sister are that's our big focus. Because we obviously worry about my mom almost every day. And it's not just my mom, because because of the time difference, I wake up to this news every day, and on Telegram, I see these videos, I see the names of all those who've been killed. Like I said, I have friends there, I have my old neighbors there, my relatives, cousins, uncles, aunts, and every day I do kind of wake up scared that one day I'll see a name I'll recognize. And that's not a fear I can explain to someone in just words, It's really depressing. But yeah, so just to answer your question real quick, I cannot go back there without them keeping me until I serve my 18 months mandatory military service.
Wow. There's another video that you sent me. I do want to play this one as well. And I hope everyone listening can take this to heart. And I say that because you never know how hard someone may have it. Like, you may think you have it hard as well. I mean, we do have our struggles here in the US as well, but I have another friend that's from Iran as well. And her family, like you, her family's not here either. So it's a really tough time for her. But I do want to play this video here as well. Let me go ahead and share this here. And this is from Obed Memorian.
Yeah.
Memorian. Here are a few of the many young people who have lost their lives in the past 2 months during the protest in Iran. The Islamic Republic has killed more than 340 people, including plus 40 children throughout the country. This must stop. So here we go. I have to mute the music because of copyright, but just so many people.
And all of them young, all of them with hopeful futures. You see all of them smiling, dancing. Yeah, that's Kian Pirfalak. He was 10 years old. And it says, "For your beautiful smiles," at the end there.
Yeah, it's so tough. I think we talk about police brutality on here a lot. I'm pretty sure you know that, but we talk about police brutality a lot. And the fact that there's no accountability, it seems like, for a lot of police officers. And then I hear stories from other countries as well, where again, there's just no accountability depending on what country you're living in. And I want to show this video as well, because I want to show people a little bit about the history, about the Iranian Revolution, that I think people need to see. And Mo, thank you so much for sending me this video as well. I just need to.
Of course.
Okay, here we go. I just muted for the music. But
Yeah, so that's 1979 when hijab became compulsory. Protests broke out immediately. Anti-compulsory hijab protests.
1999.
Mm-hmm. And 2009 is the one I remember the best because I was still in Iran when all of this was happening.
Now, do police officers in Iran, excuse me, do they have guns or do they just they have batons?
They have all of the above. They have guns, they have batons, they have pellet guns. And actually, a few of these kids died with pellet guns because they shoot so many pellet guns bullets at them that it's scary. One of the kids, his name was Reza Shaparnia, and his mother actually put out a video saying, like, what sin did my son commit? He was unarmed and you guys shot him 80 times with pellet guns. But like pellet guns, rubber bullets, all of these, like they are just called that to I think take off the effect. They still hurt like hell. They can still be lethal, and they just call them like rubber bullets, pellet guns to I think take the effect down, mentally.
Yes. For people who are not aware, there was a young girl, actually, it was a college student here that was hit with a pellet gun by a police officer. And it took her eye out. She was hit in the eye with the pellet gun. It took her eye out. That happened here in Boston. Yeah. So as you guys can see, like this has been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember seeing this much coverage of it, to be honest with you. Like going past like 2009, I remember. Before that, I don't remember seeing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the one big thing I've tried to dedicate my Twitter to. It's all now. I'm just like all I'm doing. I'm not even barely putting my own takes on them. I'm just taking the videos from direct sources inside Iran and translating them and putting them on my Twitter, because that's all they are asking. So the internet shutdown is actually that. Real quick, I want to talk about the issue of free speech, because the internet shutdown itself is such a violation of free speech. They literally just shut down the internet so they can commit whatever heinous crime they want. And to continue on that issue of free speech, they arrested two of the journalists who covered the death of Mahsa Amini. One of them is called Nilufar Hamedi. All she did was break out the news that Mahsa died, because protests were already breaking out. And on December 16, when Mahsa died, she broke the news. She's been arrested since, and she was moved to solitary confinement. She is still in Evin prison. People don't know like her well-being, like how she is. That the last we know was that she was moved to solitary confinement in Evin prison. The journalist that that covered the funeral of Mahsa Amini, her name is Elaha Mohammadi. She's also in prison. So they're just arresting any journalist that even just covers the news, because even the journalists inside Iran, they know they can't talk against the regime. But now it's gotten to the point where just covering the news, saying what's happening, is also getting these journalists arrested.
Wow. That makes me wonder, do you know if there are American journalists in Iran?
Oh, no, there are no Western journalists inside Iran unless they're affiliated with the regime. So no. Because they would keep them, and they would keep them as hostage, basically. They've arrested so many like regular like citizens from Western countries like French, Canada. They've been releasing them like pretty soon, but just as a fear mongering tactic to tell people to just don't come here, don't try to spread the news. They've been arresting like foreign citizens. So all these foreign countries, like now, actually not now, they've been asking their citizens to just leave Iran as soon as they can, or don't go to Iran for now.
Well, Mo, thank you so much for coming on to talk to us about this. It's really sad, like what's going on over there. I appreciate you coming on and being vulnerable and telling us your story as well. Thank you so much. And let me know any other way that I can help, because it does sound like with the internet shutting down and everything, it's going to be more difficult to get these stories out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for giving me this time, Sabby. Apologize for my internet issues, but thank you so much for giving Iranians a voice. That's really important. And yeah, absolutely. The best way we can help them right now is just to amplify the voices inside Iran without any turns from Western media takes, any Western pundits. Just listen to the people inside Iran.
Thank you so much, Mo.
Thank you
Talk
so
to
much,
you
Sabby.
later.
Bye.
All right, guys. That was pretty deep. But people need to know what's going on over there. And I didn't want to talk about this story until I could have someone to come on that's actually from Iran and can talk about the history a little bit as well. So shout out to Mo for doing that. Corey, I'll go ahead and take that comment on Rockfin. All right. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Dave Burt. Saw a report that some of the protests created or fueled by the U.S. government/intelligence, even though the reasons for protesting legitimate, urgent, still agree on the whole with Roger W. here. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Dave. And I'm going to go to a couple comments here and we'll get into the other stories. Bill says, it is strange, Sabby. Generally, if it is a U.S.-backed movement, the media and political propaganda in support of the protesters is generally strong. Cryosynth says the U.S. is attempting to prevent Iran. I keep saying, I always want to say Iran, is attempting to prevent Iran from joining the Russia and China rising powers. Corona, don't trust the West to help, though. Yeah. JB says all the U.S. needs to do is express support and lift the sanctions, nothing more. Michael says sanctions are a form of warfare. Where Pilgrim says all my enemies just happen to be terrorists. What a coincidence. LOL. Zero Joshua, best recruitment and manipulation tool, people in poverty. Jennifer, especially when the U.S. state wants to install a regime favorable to U.S. capitalist interests, which is what usually happens. That's true. Corey says that was during the celebration to the 2004 Red Sox advancing to the World Series. That's right. He's referring to the story I was telling you about the college student who was hit with a pellet gun, who was hit with a pellet in the eye, and it took her eye out. And Corey also says also about that 2004 incident from the Boston police. It did more than take her eye out. She was killed. That's right. That's right. Well, guys, we have a lot to talk about tonight. Let's go ahead and give a quick shout out to Sabby patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories. All of their names are listed here. You can be a member, a Sabby, a Sabsters, Sabinator, or of course, the ultimate. You guys are doing the damn thing. You're keeping the lights on over here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen on the ticker. And I want to give a special shout out to a new Sabby patron. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's go ahead and give it up for Bad Benito. Whoop, whoop. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate all your support. So, what else are we going to talk about tonight, guys? We're going to get into it. I promise you, the other stories won't be as heavy. Actually, one of them is kind of heavy. But anywho, let's get into it. Tonight, we are discussing Briahna Joy Gray and Tezlyn Figaro reveal the con. Very good discussion there. I can't wait to get into that. I'm also going to discuss Kevin McCarthy forced the vote. We'll give you an update on how that's turning out. And I'm also going to discuss Eric Adams' new homelessness law. This guy is a piece of work, let me tell you. He's really turned New York City into a police state. I got to tell you, we're going to get into that story. And believe it or not, we will be discussing San Francisco robot cops. Yes, it's real. I'm not joking here, and it's pretty crazy. And of course, Mo was just here, and we just talked about the Iran protest. So let's go ahead and get into it. Doobie-doobie-doo. We're going to get into this robot cop story. Now, this is a little crazy. It's going to sound a little nutty, but it's real. Now, I got to tell you, when I first heard about this story, immediately I thought of this episode from Black Mirror called Metalhead. Now, Metalhead, in this episode, they had robot dogs. Now, originally, these dogs were designed to keep out criminals, to protect the innocent, and to go after the criminals. Now, if you know anything about Black Mirror, you know that this show takes place in the future. And it talks about the pros and the cons of technology, how it starts out good and then shit goes crazy. That's what happens with almost every Black Mirror episode, right? Same thing happens in this one. Because you see, the robot dogs were more like police. But the robot dogs at some point seem to malfunction, and they can't tell the difference between a human criminal and just a human who is not a criminal. So the robot dogs start to see all humans as the enemy. It's a wild and crazy episode. You got to check it out. And that's what I thought of when I heard about this story coming out of San Francisco. This is not a joke. This is for real. This is serious. And they have already approved it. So San Francisco has decided to start using robot cops. I kid you not. Let's get into it.
These robots defuse bombs. They give police a closer look at an active crime scene. And now?
It passes unanimously.
San Francisco's police force will have the ability to use them as potential lethal force options. But that decision wasn't made lightly. We heard passionate arguments and clarifications coming from both sides.
Of course, I don't want any officer to lose their life, but I think that this is the scenarios that we're using are hypotheticals to bring up fear.
These are not autonomous robots. No one's tapping in. These are trained police officers that would utilize a robot.
A new state law now requires law enforcement to have public discussions when acquiring and utilizing military-grade weapons. That's what happened here, and the plan passed only after an amendment clarifies robots would only be used as a lethal option after the use of alternative force and de-escalation tactics, or if police determine they are not able to subdue the threat safely after evaluating other options.
Pause. These are supposed to be used if the police officer, again, they're given the discretion to the police. If the police officer decides, well, I've tried to de-escalate. Well, I've tried other forces. Time to bring in the RoboCop. They're actually trusting law enforcement to make that decision to determine whether or not to bring in the robot cop. Who are they going to target? Who are they going to go after? By the way, these robots are designed to use lethal force. Now, for people who tell me that we need to fund the police, that we don't need to defund the police, I always come back with them with more data and tell them that cops only solve 0.02% of crime. I tell them about how police mainly protect capital. They don't really protect poor people in poor neighborhoods. They protect rich people, though, and they protect property. Now that you have a city like San Francisco that is trying to use robot cops, hopefully this will make my point clear that the police are not really doing their job. The police don't really help. You need a robot to come in and help you do your job. You see the problem? What happens if the robots malfunction? Just like in the Black Mirror episode, some people say, oh, that's far-fetched, Sabby. No, it's technology. Technology breaks down sometimes. Sometimes technology doesn't work correctly. Sometimes technology can have a short. What happens? What happens if the robot uses lethal force on the wrong person? Let's go back in. I can't believe they would actually give this discretion to the police officers of all people.
Only the chief, assistant chief of operations, or deputy chief of special operations may authorize the use of robots as a deadly force option.
Supervisor Shaman Walton was one of 3 against the plan. In a statement, he wrote in part, "This is not in line with making changes to address the disproportionate number of black people and people of color that are typically on the receiving end when police weapons are utilized."
That is true. That is very true. Now there's more. Like I said, they're going to target a certain group of people. They're going to do the same things. The police officers are mainly going into black and brown neighborhoods, harassing black and brown people to make their quotas, to fit their quota. And they're going to have these robot cops with them. There's more. Now I want to get into this article here. So this goes a little bit deeper. San Francisco approves plan to allow police robots to use deadly force in emergency situations. See how they're wording it differently? In the video, they're like, well, after they've tried everything else. And in this article, it says, in emergency situations. What defines emergency, though? They're leaving that up to the cops. So they go on to say, and then I can play the video here. San Francisco leaders voted to allow the city's police department to use potentially lethal robots in emergency situations. Under this policy, SFPD is authorized to use these robots to carry out deadly force in extremely limited situations. Okay. When risk to loss of life to members of the public or officers is imminent and outweighs any other force option available. San Francisco leaders voted 8-3 on Tuesday in support of the new policy. The San Francisco Police Department has 17 robots, but none are armed with guns, and the department has no plan to do so. Okay, the department could deploy robots equipped with explosive charges. As if that's any better. Explosive charges to contact, incapacitate, or disorient violent, armed, or dangerous suspect during emergency situations when lives are at risk, according to the police department according to the police department spokesperson. So that's where they're getting their talking points from, as if we should trust the police department or their spokesperson. This is crazy. This is crazy. Listen, look at the language, you guys. Here they're saying no guns on the cop robots, but explosive charges. But up here at the beginning, they tell you lethal robots, which means they will kill you. Now, I'm going to play this video clip here from Fox News, because what was really funny about this is I want you to hear how they feel about this. Now, remember, they're supposed to be pro-cop, pro-blue, all that kind of stuff. Blue is in police department, not Democrats. But they're pro-cop, right? Protect the blue, back the blue. Listen to what they say in this interview, though.
So who's building these robots? Can they be hacked? Probably. What if I pour a cup of water on it? Or what if I just kick it over? And how long until Democrats start calling these robots racist? I mean, computers make mistakes all the time. I can barely log on to my laptop without Johnny. And now I'm supposed to trust a Roomba with a Ruger? Sultan McGee is a Duke University professor and former chief innovation officer at FDIC. All right, professor, is this really a good idea?
It's an awful idea, Jesse. It's like these guys are taking policy decisions from the Terminator franchise. We can barely manage keeping our police safe as it is. So what are we going to do? Take their, training and decision making out of it and just have a bunch of robots do it? It's crazy.
Do you think that they see a benefit to having a robot?
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I was muted. I was telling you to look at the robot dog here. You see the little guy? This is exactly, it reminds me of the one in Black Mirror, but I just see this as like dangerous. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Maybe they think that police are racist and can't be trusted making split-second decisions. So there's an algorithm.
Now you see how he spin this? Maybe they think police are racist, so they can't be trusted. Yeah, some of them are. Some of them are. And no, they shouldn't be trusted. Answer that question for you. But he's also leaving out the fact that, again, the RoboCop dog, or whatever you want to call these things, the RoboCop is supposed to accompany the police officer. He's also leaving out the fact that the police officer is the one that makes the decision whether or not to use the RoboCop. So that's important for people to know. It's not like they're sending all these like RoboCops out on the street. But what's troubling also is the fact that they're allowing law enforcement to decide whether or not it is a situation where they can use the RoboCop. And after everything that has happened with police brutality, particularly George Floyd, Amir Locke, Jalen McMillan, the fact that they are allowing law enforcement to be trusted to make that decision is very appalling. I want to remind you, San Francisco has one of the largest homeless populations in the United States. You don't think they're not going to be targeted? Police already target them now. They are one of the most unprotected groups in the United States is homeless people, because they are constantly attacked, whether they're being attacked by residents walking down the street. I've seen people steal from homeless people just being an ass. I've seen teenagers kick homeless people just being an ass. And I've seen police officers harass homeless people. When you are unhoused, you are not protected at all. You are very vulnerable. So I can imagine that population is going to be heavily targeted in San Francisco.
Well, you know, they've got to make up their mind. They don't want algorithms helping people get mortgages. They don't want algorithms helping us catch terrorist finance, but they do want algorithms shooting people on the streets. I mean, it's laughable. It makes no sense at all. At the end of the day, it's a bunch of people who barely know how to change the ringtone on their iPhone making these kinds of decisions. Maybe they shouldn't be the ones doing it.
So what's happening if there's a hostage situation? Is the goal is to not have a negotiator just send in some dog with a machine gun that's controlled by a joystick somewhere? Or does this thing have its own internal processing system?
Well, the way they're thinking about it is it's going to make its own decisions, and it's going to be specifically used in places where it's too dangerous to send in anyone else, to send in.
See, he said they're going to be, the robot cop is going to make its own decision. That's actually not what was said in the video or the article that I read you. The police officer is going to make that decision. They're both still bad. They shouldn't be used at all.
An actual human. So you are going to have a dog with a machine gun walk into a room and decide if it's going to start shooting or not. And I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, how about they just take the robots, don't give them guns, and they just make little claws, and they take the homeless and they just kind of throw them in the... I'm kidding. I would never support that. Professor, thank you so much. This is a very scary idea, which means San Francisco is definitely going to approve of it.
And that professor there knows better. Professors do a lot of research. It was very clear to me he didn't do his research on this story, or he did, and he's changing his narrative because he went on to Fox News. But let's be clear. Let's not sit around and start thinking that all of a sudden they're anti-police. They're still definitely pro-police. The only reason he's talking about this story and he's making fun of it and he's against it is because it's happening in liberal San Francisco and it's pushed by Democrats. So you need to keep that in mind. Thank you for the super chat, Rosie. Is this where people's tax money is going? RoboCops? Do you guys remember the movie RoboCop? Are people old enough in the chat to remember RoboCop? That's what it kind of reminded me of in a way. Either way, this is very scary. This is very scary. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't like this. I don't like this at all. Curtis said they passed it because no one on that committee was black. Bill, you can bet these dogs will be armed with tear gas in protests all over the nation in the near future. That's another thing. And what's scary about this, yes, right now, it's only San Francisco. But what if other cities start to do it? San Francisco could be the first. What if Eric Adams gets a hold of something like this? He's already going kind of crazy. We're going to go to that story next, because you need to hear what he's trying to do to homeless people. And then this kind of thing spreads. And next thing you know, you got these robot cops walking around the cities, just like in that Black Mirror episode. And you want to talk about protest? Just imagine. Raziel, malfunction. No, that's Boston Dynamics programming. We do have Boston Dynamics here. They're also doing those. Kitty loves films. I'm very, 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 very worried about the future in regards to protesting. The ruling class knows what's up. They are getting ready. Exactly. You guys see what's happening? This is why they wanted you to give more money to this is why they want more police funding, so they can control the masses. The quantum alchemist. Yeah. And if the justice apparatus doesn't like someone, the robot suddenly malfunction. Whoops. Myra's mama, I got a hammer and everything is a nail. Cravond, they will say it was an error and machines can't be held accountable. Free. The robot will have qualified immunity. You have a point. Apollo Creed, these robots will mostly be used against Black people. Exactly. And we're going to get into more about the police state as well, because this actually transitions into the Eric Adams story. People really need to wake up to what is happening in this country in reference to the police state. It's not just about the robot cops in San Francisco. It is also about Eric Adams trying to hospitalize homeless people. Now you have to remember that Eric Adams was a former police officer. You also need to know, and some of you may not know this, that Eric Adams was also once a Republican. A lot of people don't talk about that. So he wanted to come in and he wanted to be hard on crime. Okay, thanks, Corey. He wanted to come in and he wanted to be hard on crime. And he's doing just that. From my friends that live in New York City tell me you can't go like one block without seeing cops. They've already been harassing homeless people in New York. I showed videos before, a couple months ago, actually, where they were destroying people's tents. Now he's trying to find a way to agitate homeless people that he feels are mentally ill. And this is really interesting. You got to hear this. I'm going to do the article and then I'm going to show you the clip, because I think this is very dangerous and I do not like how things are happening in New York City. I don't like this at all. And I hope people who voted for Eric Adams are really regretting their decision. I really do. So Eric Adams, NYC Mayor Adams faces backlash for move to involuntarily hospitalize homeless people. Here we go. New York City Mayor Eric Adams is facing backlash after moving forward with a host of policy changes that crack down on the city's homeless population. On Tuesday, Adams announced officials will begin hospitalizing more homeless people by involuntarily providing care to those deemed to be in psychiatric crisis. Now, how do they know that they are necessarily in a psychiatric crisis? Who's making that decision? Let's go on. For too long, there has been a gray area where policy, law, and accountability have not been clear. And this has allowed people in need to slip through the cracks. God. This culture of uncertainty has led to untold suffering and deep frustration. It cannot continue. Pay very close attention to the rhetoric here that he's using. It cannot, he says. And for months, Adam and his administration have discussed stopping unhoused people from sheltering in subways, despite pending budget cuts that will remove services the city provides to the homeless. At least 470 people were reportedly arrested this year for being outstretched or taking up more than one seat on a train car. F that. I used to live in New York. Yes, there was homeless people. Sometimes homeless people slept in the subway. Sometimes they slept on the train. They didn't bother me. They weren't bothering people. I feel like they're trying to criminalize homelessness, just like Jeffrey Katzenberg wanted to do in Los Angeles, by the way. So what do? The shelters are full. You don't want them sleeping outside in their tents. You take their tents, you kick them out, kick out the homeless encampments. You take their tents, they move on to another location, get another tent. The police come and they kick them out again. They go sleep in the subways. Now he's trying to take them out of the subways. They try to sleep on a park bench. Don't want them to sleep on a park bench. Trying to sleep on a subway train. Don't want to sleep in the train. Now he's trying to put them in mental institutions. Homelessness should not be criminalized. And this idea that everyone who is homeless is mentally ill is bullshit. The fact that he's even allowed to do this is very scary. It is concerning. And again, all of you in New York City that voted for Eric Adams, I hope you feel in some kind of way right now. Like, really. Because he wanted to turn it into a police state, and this is exactly what he's doing. Exactly. Let's go on. In March, the authorities targeted those living under Brooklyn Queens Expressway in Williamsburg, while Adams reportedly attended an event promoting a Wells Fargo credit card people can use to pay rent. Let me tell you something about Williamsburg. You know, Williamsburg used to be like a working class European neighborhood when I lived in New York. You know what Williamsburg looks like now? It's full of yuppie professionals, tech bros. That's what Williamsburg looks like now. Most people I know can't afford to live there now. That's the new Williamsburg. It wasn't unusual to see homeless people. Gentrification has made it really hard for anyone who's working class, anyone who's poor, to stay in the neighborhoods that they've grown up in, that they've lived in for years. So you gentrify the neighborhoods and the working class and the poor people are pushed out. And because you have professionals living there now you got to get rid of the homeless people because it doesn't look good, because optics. Adams' policies drew criticism from advocates for homeless people. Well, duh, Adams. Mayor Adams continues to get it wrong when it comes to his reliance on ineffective surveillance, policing, and involuntary transport and treatment of people with mental illness. And this is something I want to highlight. Involuntary. That means they will be taken by force. That's coming from Jacqueline Simone. She's the policy director for the Coalition for the Homeless. Homeless people are more likely to be the victims of crimes than the perpetrators. This is exactly what I was explaining to you guys earlier. They are. This is true. I've seen them harassed multiple times. We have homeless people in Boston too. I've seen it. I've seen college students try to fuck with them. because they think it's cool or whatever. I've seen all of this. But Mayor Adams has continually scapegoated homeless people and others with mental illness as violent. Eva Wong, the director of the Mayor's Office of Community Mental Health, defended the changes. These new protocols and trainings will ensure that agencies and systems responsible for connecting our community members with severe mental illnesses to treatments and working in unison to get them the support they need and deserve. Well, let me ask you a question then, Eva. If it's about helping the community, then why aren't you offering those mental health services to everyone in the community? Why are you only targeting homeless people? Because you see, if we had universal health care in this country, if we had a Medicare for all system, then people could get those mental services that they need. There are health insurance plans that don't include any type of therapy, any type of mental health treatment at all. And if your health insurance is tied to your employer, you don't really get that many options. You get what they got. You get the plan that they chose. That's what you're stuck with, whether it's a high deductible or not. So if it's really about getting people in the community the help that they need, why aren't you offering free mental health services to everyone in the community? You are targeting homeless people so you can get them off the street, and you want to put them in a mental institution so that they're not in your way, so that you can walk down this, so you and Eric can walk down the street without worrying about seeing them. Because when you see homeless people all the time, it's a reminder. It's a reminder. It can happen to anyone. And some of the wealthy people, they don't want to see it because they got that reminder. You walk past all these homeless tents, these homeless encampments, and then you go in your fancy house, your fancy condo. If you don't feel some type of guilt, some type of shame, if you're not trying to use your resources or the networks that you have to help those people, and I don't mean go put them into a mental institution, but help those people. If you're not trying to find a way to feed those people, you need to feel some type of guilt and shame. Now, it goes on to say, however, others are unsure if the city has the infrastructure it needs for emergency medical response. New York City public advocate Jermaine D. Williams said the city needs to invest millions into its approach to the ongoing mental health crisis. The number of respite care centers which the city uses to house those in crisis fell by half in the past 3 years. Only 2 drop-in centers for adults dealing with mental health crisis have been created since 2019. There were more than 60,000 homeless people, including 19,310 homeless children sleeping in New York City's main municipal shelter system, and that was as of September. And yet, none of them in leadership are sitting back and saying, why are all these people homeless? Why are the homeless rates increasing? We don't have guaranteed housing for people in this country. There's no housing for all. Yet the rents continue to increase. New York City is one of the most expensive cities to live in the United States. And they're shocked that the homeless population has increased over these years, including we had a pandemic as well. They're shocked that the cost of living is too much for people. None of them in leadership are really trying to address the poverty issue. None of them are really trying to fix that. Eric Adams just wants to police shit. He just want to bring in more cops and penalize people and criminalize people. He's not trying to fix it. He don't want to fix the poverty issue. New York is so expensive now. It's like, forget it. Forget it. Even some professionals can't afford to live in New York City anymore. I knew someone who was living in New York City, they were making 6 figures and they still had to get a second job. So there's a problem. There's a problem here, but this should not be acceptable. I have a clip here that I want to play as well, because this is getting a lot of attention and it should. So here we go.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams' new long-term strategy to fix the Big Apple's homeless crisis is stirring controversy.
If severe mental illness is causing someone to be unsheltered and a danger to themselves, we have a moral obligation to help them get the treatment and care they need.
His plan, announced this week, involves hospitalizing severely mentally ill homeless people, even if it's against their will.
Even if it is against their will. I don't understand how anyone can defend this. So I had to point that out to people, even if it's against their will and they don't want to go.
Adams said the city will pair clinicians with police officers into teams dedicated to getting New Yorkers in crisis into care.
These specialized intervention teams will have the training, expertise, and sensitivity to ensure that those in need are safely transported to a hospital for evaluation.
You expect the police to safely transport someone? The NYPD, which is one of the most corrupt police forces in the country, you expect them to safely transport someone? They're pairing clinicians with police officers. So let me ask you a question. What happens if the homeless person that they decide, okay, you got to come and go with us? What happens if that person doesn't want to go? And they say, no, you can't. I don't want to go. You don't want to take me. The clinician is with the police officer. What happens if that police officer uses brutal force against that homeless person? There is nothing the clinician can do. They have to just stand there and go along with it. This is terrible. Could you imagine? Could you imagine sitting on a park bench and here comes a cop and a clinician and saying, you got to go with us. We got to take you to the hospital. And they just throw you into a mental institution? This seems like something out of a Marvel movie. Like, is this from Marvel Comics or something? Like, this doesn't seem real to me. And he should not be allowed to do this. Now, this is where the governor of New York should come in. This is where the governor of New York should intervene and say, wait a minute, this is not going down. But I don't see that happening either.
To a hospital for evaluation.
Adams also plans to provide officers with a phone line to consult medical experts directly when dealing with cases of mental illness. And he wants to build a continuum of care, so those hospitalized aren't simply sent back out into the city a few days later.
So the people that are hospitalized, you heard that? They're not sent back out into the city a few days later. Where are they going to send them? Where are they going to send them? Do they have housing set up for them? The shelters are full. So where are they going to send them? Something to think about.
The New York Association of Psychiatric Rehabilitation Services CEO Harvey Rosenthal says the reality is that hospitals are already overloaded, and the issue should not be dumped on law enforcement.
The mayor's talking about training the police, and the police will get a hotline. It's just too much to vest on them. And frankly, there's been too many tragedies on both sides. So,
see, the cops don't even want to do it. Listen to this, you guys.
So, we don't need more arrests and incarcerations and tragedies when it comes to involving the police.
Rosenthal warned
what was that? We don't need more arrests. We don't need it. We don't need it.
The plan could raise legal questions and may lead to lawsuits.
If people need housing, they should get housing. If people need a crisis support, we have plenty of supports, new ones and old ones, that are not the emergency room in a hospital. So we're looking at an institutional sort of solution that is probably a violation of rights and certainly the wrong way to go and a traumatizing way to go.
New York City has seen a rise in violence, including random attacks on subway riders in the last year. Adams and New York Governor Kathy Hochul have vowed to address the issue by expanding mental health services and stepping up police presence on subways. The mayor's
Stepping up police presence on subways. You know, it's interesting to me when I hear them say that New York, well, the crime rate is rising and da-da-da. Talk to people that lived in New York in the 80s. Talk to people that have lived there like 80s, early 90s and ask them about the crime rate today.
office said on Tuesday the city would begin deploying co-response teams of health workers and police officers to patrol high-traffic subway stations as more homeless people are expected to gather there during the winter months.
The police state is in full force. In full force. Thank you for the super chat, Rosie. Human cops can't even act right in an emergency, let alone robots, explosives. Are they for real? Bryce, some racist ass cop is going to make that decision. Right. That's what I was saying. Scott, psychiatric crisis equals anyone who gets upset when the cop tears up a tent city. Thanks for the super chat, Yonina. Sophia is a female robot and she has citizenship in Saudi Arabia. But the most of the women who live there do not have citizenship. Also, don't look up Palantir. It may get you put on a list. And yeah, interesting. Angela, so take away the funding and tell them they can't shelter anywhere and then sit around with their thumbs up their butt saying, what are we going to do about all these homeless? Blah, blah, donate to me. RIP Avery D. Nolan. Many have jobs, but not enough money for rent. That's right. That's right. Some people that are homeless because they were evicted. And thank you for this super chat as well, Nonina. If they successfully criminalize the homeless, they will criminalize thinking for yourself next. No critical thinker. They're problematic and we have ways to deal with them. Y'all think they won't use white phosphorus on us? Question mark there. Interesting. Thank you for the super chat, ADMF. Fiction becoming fact, scary, fuck. Check out Victor Laval horror book, Devil in Silver. Main character involuntarily committed to a psych ward in NYC. Oh my God. I'll have to check that out. And thank you for the super chat, Yonina. I live in a mostly rural white area. No comprehensive mental health care here. Also, they shut down the maternity wing to keep Medicaid receivers out. Well. And thank you for the super chat, Rosie. Using mental health as a scapegoat, it's sick. The help they need. How about a guaranteed roof over their heads and health care for everybody? Well said. Well said, Rosie. Thank you so much. And I'll take those comments on Rockfin. I don't know why my face looks dewy. I don't know why it looks dewy. Is that the humidity? I don't know. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. This is what happens when you have a mayor and a governor in the pocket of Reb New York, real estate brokers of New York, and voters with no ballot initiative option. They put themselves in a bind. A bunch of private equity firms who own housing as they engage in rent speculation, driving up housing costs. We need to outlaw private equity from owning housing, hospitals, clinics, nursing homes, medical facilities. Dialysis will fix this. Well said, Roger. Well said. Yeah, I look dewy. Do I look dewy to you guys? I don't know. There's like a glow on my face. It's weird. Maybe it's just the makeup. Weird. It's weird. I got like a pregnancy glow. Maybe that's my camera. Woo. No, it's not my camera. I don't know what's going on. Anywho, let's get on to the next story here. Some of you are probably like, what? Force the vote. Now, this was a story that got a lot of attention when we were asking the squad to force the vote for Medicare for All against Nancy Pelosi's speakership for the House. Now, we know how that turned out. They didn't force the vote. Nancy Pelosi went on and became speaker and just recently stepped down from Democrat leadership. So she was only in for 2 years anyway. Now, that's a whole nother story I can get into. You guys know I'm pretty livid about that anyway, pretty passionate about that. But now it seems as though a few Republicans are willing to do what the squad was not ready to do or brave enough to do. And this time against Kevin McCarthy. So if you have not heard, let's bring it on in. 5 Republicans publicly oppose McCarthy's speakership bid, putting ascension to leadership role in jeopardy. Some people are not feeling the Kev. I'm sorry, when I hear Kevin McCarthy, it reminds me of the movie Home Alone. Wasn't that his name? Kevin? Wasn't it McCarthy? I thought it was something like that. Anywho, at least 5 House Republicans are on record opposing House. Whoops. Okay, that's better. At least 5 House Republicans are on record opposing Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy's bid to become Speaker when the party takes control in January. So at least 5. The high-profile defections have raised questions about whether McCarthy will have the votes necessary to clinch the position on the floor of the House. Officially, 218 votes are needed to elect a Speaker when the next Congress assembles on January 3rd. McCarthy's margin is significantly narrow. The GOP is expected to wind up with a 222-seat majority in January compared to an estimated 213 seats for Democrats. If all 435 members of the House are present and voting for the Speaker in January, McCarthy can lose no more than 4 Republican votes. At the moment, there are at least 5 House Republicans who oppose McCarthy, while several others are seen as on the fence. House Republicans need a leader with credibility across every spectrum of the GOP conference in order to be capable fighting force for the American people. Now, that's coming from Matt Gaetz. He goes on to say that person is not Kevin McCarthy. Now, I have to ask, why couldn't the progressives, I guess we're not calling them progressives anymore. Why couldn't the squad speak up like that against Nancy Pelosi? Because I got to tell you, the 5 who are against it, they don't seem to be concerned that their seat is in any jeopardy. They don't seem to be concerned that this is going to affect their political career. However, when it came to the squad, it was obvious that they were concerned about that. They had to get on Nancy Pelosi's good side instead of doing what they were supposed to do, which is forcing the vote for Medicare for All. And I want to remind you guys that was a DSA strategy. Comes right out of the DSA handbook. But now we have 5 Republicans that are willing to do that against Kevin McCarthy. Interesting. Now it goes on to say the Freedom Caucus is demanding McCarthy cede some power as price for support. So here they are saying to Kevin McCarthy, look, here's the deal. You want our vote? You got to do a couple of things for us first. That is all we were asking the squad to do in reference to Nancy Pelosi. You want our vote? You got to bring Medicare for All bill to the floor for a vote. Now, some people were against it because they said it's not going to pass. So what was the point? The point was to see who's who. So we can see the people, the Democrats that would vote against it. That was the point. During a pandemic, they didn't have the guts to do it. Let's go on. He goes on to say Gates, along with GOP, Ralph Norman of South Carolina, Andy Biggs of Arizona, is seen as a hard no on McCarthy. Look, I don't know what McCarthy did, but when you say you're a hard no, that says a lot. Regardless of the concessions offered, the three are unlikely to vote for the Californians' ascension to speaker. So these three in particular, they're saying, regardless of what kind of deal he makes with them, they're still not going to vote for him. Now, you got to have some balls to like just seriously say, yeah, I don't care. You're not getting my vote. All right. It goes on to say House Freedom Caucus wants option of removing the speaker as price for giving Kevin McCarthy the gavel. The other two Republicans, Bob Good of Virginia and Matt Rosendale of Montana, have also voiced their opposition publicly. Both lawmakers, however, have not explicitly ruled out voting for McCarthy in exchange for concessions on the House rules. Yeah, so Kev's in trouble. Kev's in trouble. This is that moment where, if we're going back to Home Alone, this is that moment where the mother would sit up on the plane and she'd go, Kevin! Kev's in trouble. Now, Don Lemon talked about this as well. I want you guys to hear what he had to say about this, about the fact that people may vote against Kevin McCarthy as speaker. Let's hear it.
Current House, I should say, Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is warning House Republicans, get in line and support his bid for speaker or expect disaster. Watch.
Having a challenge on the floor is never going to be positive, and really you turn the floor over to the Democrats when you do it. This is very fragile, that we're the only stopgap for this Biden administration. And if we don't do this right, the Democrats can take the majority. If we play games on the floor, the Democrats can end up picking who the speaker is. We need to do this for the American people. We either are successful together or we will fail individually, and we will not be given the possibility or the opportunity to be in the majority again.
So at least 5 House Republicans say, as of now, they won't support McCarthy's leadership bid.
All right, I wanted to pause it here because I wanted you to see their faces. So these are the dudes. I think Ralph Norman may be changing his mind, but I'm not sure. I have to double check. These are the guys that said, no, yeah, we're not feeling you, dude. 2 of them said you need to give us something in return. And the other 3 are like, I'm not voting for you regardless. What's really funny is that Kevin McCarthy made that statement on different networks, giving a warning to Republicans, telling them, like, you guys can't mess this up. If you don't vote for me as speaker, you're basically giving the Democrats this priority here, this chance to be able to pick the person, to be able to pick the Republican. So you guys can't mess this up. You know what's really funny, though? I'm pretty sure all of these guys know that. Like, they didn't just join yesterday. So I'm sure all of these guys know this, and they still don't give a shit. This is what the squad should have done. Be bold, be brave. And I'm going to talk about them tomorrow, because I got a lot to say about them for what happened today with the railroad strike and all that shit. I said, nope, I'm going to take a day. I'm going to put it all together. I'm going to examine it all. And then we're going to talk about that tomorrow night. But no, couldn't do it. Now they have their faces up here. Everybody sees who they are. Everyone sees their names. And they're still like, yeah, whatever. I don't care.
So now what? What is next? So joining us now, senior political analyst Jonathan Martin, senior political columnist at Politico. Good morning. So glad you could be here. It's good to see you in person. So let's talk. But this is about raw numbers, okay? Yeah. So McCarthy needs 218 votes. If every other lawmaker besides those 5 vote on party lines, he's 2 votes short. So is he really in danger here?
He's in real danger. Now, the good news for McCarthy is that today is December 1st, not January 1st. So he's got a little bit of time to work those members. Look, when you're the leader of a party in Congress, you have a lot of tools at your disposal, right? You can offer carrots and sticks. And for the next month, McCarthy's going to be doing a lot of that, trying to reel in just enough people with sort of various carrots, perhaps a couple sticks.
Two quick questions that are kind of combined.
Yeah.
If not McCarthy, who?
Yeah.
And how is this different from Paul Ryan in 2015?
Well,
so here's something to think about here. So if every other Republican in the House votes for Kevin McCarthy, he still needs at least 2 of those guys to flip. He needs 2 of them to change their mind. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, the obvious backup would be Steve Scalise, who's the number 2 from Louisiana, Don's home state, who is somebody who's seen as sort of a mainstream conservative and isn't as despised, I guess, by the far right as McCarthy is in the House. And in terms of the Ryan question, this is part of the challenge the House GOP has. There's no sort of Paul Ryan waiting in the wings here who can step forward and be a sort of broadly popular and sort of a super impressive pick. It's no offense against Steve Scalise. He's perfectly capable, but he just doesn't have the sort of background that Paul Ryan had. Ryan had been on a national ticket in 2012, obviously, before he became Speaker of the House.
Well, I've been struck by the Republicans who have come out in support of Kevin McCarthy at this very difficult time. He's saying basically if we don't stay united, Democrats are going to end up picking who's our House Speaker because the margin is so dang slim.
Yeah, look, this doesn't happen in Congress, but it has happened in states over the years where you have a very tight legislature and there's some kind of a bipartisan deal to elect a compromise candidate. I think in a very polarized Washington, that's still pretty darn unlikely that you would see that kind of a pick emerge from the political center, if you will. I think it's more likely, Caitlin, that we'll see a Steve Scalise, a sort of conservative backup plan if McCarthy can't get there.
Could we talk about rail strike and the president? Yeah. So Amtrak, Joe, right? And
so that's the part I wanted to play there. I also thought it was interesting. Does this guy have on a polo and a suit? Is this a polo? Wait a minute. No. Is this a white collar shirt and a zip up polo jacket and a suit jacket? That's interesting. I don't know about that combination there. But Kevin McCarthy's in real danger right now. He's in danger right now. What's that? The jamming sweater? Oh, that's a sweater. Okay, so it's a zip-up sweater. It looks like all right, there's a lot going on there. I don't know. It's just a lot. But Kevin McCarthy is in trouble. Dude's got some issues. Now, they talked about this on CNN as well. I want to give a shout out to Case Study QB here for this clip because I want you to hear how they discuss this as well.
Kevin McCarthy has until January 3rd, right? Or January 4th if it carries over. That's when they pick a speaker on the floor of the House of Representatives. He is still short the votes. He had meetings yesterday. He calls them the family, different factions of the Republican Party in his office. On the way out, Jim Jordan, a key member of the Freedom Caucus, said, quote, "We had a breakthrough." Ralph Norman, one of the Republicans who has said, "I will not vote for Kevin McCarthy," says, "I'm open to negotiating anything."
Okay, I was right. That's right. So Ralph Norman, he's thinking about changing his mind. He's open to negotiating.
Kevin McCarthy willing to somehow renegotiate the rules, apparently, of how things work, how powerful the speaker is. Do we have any evidence? Did he move the ball at all forward? Did the ball go backwards? Is he status quo? Do we know?
I'm only laughing a little bit because this is going to be a everyday occurrence for the next couple of years if Kevin McCarthy becomes Speaker of the House. The fact that he had Marjorie Taylor Greene in the room on his behalf, he is using her as his latest weapon to kind of corral the far right.
So that's important to note. That was another thing I wanted to mention is that Marjorie Taylor Greene has decided to support Kevin McCarthy. So that could help him in a sense. But again, I mean, it's Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's a little loony anyway. So some of the Republicans may look at her like, why should we listen to her? But that may help him. But again, like, man, I wish we had this with the squad. I wish we had this like for Force the Vote. I wish we had that same type of, I don't know, courage and strength. And no, instead we have like AOC, Rashida Tlaib, who she may bend every once in a while. Ilhan Omar, she may bend every once in a while. You got Jamal Bowman, who's the weakest link. Cori Bush, who looks like she lost half the time. And Ayanna Pressley, who a lot of people honestly forget about. That's what we got.
He's going to have to be a peace broker for the foreseeable future. But his first task, as you said, he has to get 218 votes, and he's not there yet. And he is working extremely hard to get it.
Yeah, and he's to keep everybody in line, right? As he's speaker. I mean, we've seen what has happened to prior speakers who've been run out of town by this more right-wing part of the Republican Party. You know, I think this was his dream job. I think it's going to be a tough one to keep. If he gets it.
There's no room for error. He can only lose 4 votes, and I think today, I think he'll have a hard time.
Up to Capitol Hill, the new Kevin McCarthy has.
I'm tired of Hakeem Jeffries too. So yeah, so it was looking pretty scary there for Kevin McCarthy. And I do want to go ahead. I want to go to some of the comments here. Let me go ahead and get the ones on Rockfin first, Corey. I'm going to scoot over so I'm not dewy. I don't look dewy now. Okay. Thanks for the tip on Rockfin Roger. God damn it. I said it before and I'll say it again. We need to pass the New York Health Act and the New York Public Banking Act and the State Public Banking Act of New York Act. Public banks curb high-risk speculation of all types, create more low-income housing. North Dakota, Wyoming, and South Dakota have the smallest homeless populations according to Lending Tree analysis. This is the website I got the last sentence from. Last Rockfin message. It shows real quick a list of the states from most least homeless population. North Dakota, only state with a public bank, is number 51. Please put in chat. I will do that. I will do that, Roger. Oh, wait, did I do that already? Oh, Corey did that. Okay. Let me, I'll go to that in just a second. And then I want to read the other comment. I think there's another comment there. Or no, maybe not. Okay. I am dewy. I don't know what's happening here. Anywho, let me show you guys what Roger is referring to, and then we'll get to our final story tonight. I'm so freaking dewy. Where homelessness is most and least prevalent. So this is interesting. This is what Roger was referring to. And I'll make this bigger because it is kind of tiny. Okay. And this is homeless population by state. So you can see number 1 is California, of course. New York, Florida, Texas. Damn, Texas. I'm surprised. Texas has a lower cost of living than California or New York, but I'm surprised by that. Texas has a lower cost of living than Washington State and Massachusetts. That's why I'm surprised by that. But it is what it is. California, New York, Florida, Texas, Washington, Massachusetts, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Ohio. Those are the top 10. Wow. Yeah, it stops there. So I can't see the rest of it. But yeah, Corey had put that link in the chat for you guys so that you can see that as well. Maybe Texas is up there in one of the top 5 because of the weather. See, in Massachusetts, we have longer winters. So here, it's kind of hard to sleep outside in the snow. Just keeping it real. And thank you for the super chat, Reverend Edmund Balella. I have worked in New York City homeless service for decades. Besides the moral and clinical objections to these involuntary committals, there are never enough psych beds. This is not the answer. Thank you so much for that. See? Bill says the Tea Party used their leverage, the Freedom Caucus using their leverage. The DNC is so much better at squashing internal division. And Angela says, LOL, MTG is the MAGA version of the squad, only has a strong voice when her party isn't in the majority. Now that they are, she's going to sell herself to the highest bidder. There you go. There you go. Okay. We're getting into our final story, which I think is more of a, I guess I would call it a fun story. I'm not liking my hair or my dewiness tonight. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, I'm going to stop looking at it. Look, check this out. So, Briahna Joy Gray and Tezlyn Figaro had a discussion recently on Rising about the squad and about what this really is. Everything that we're seeing happening, everything that we've been complaining about, and how this all happened. And Tezlyn Figaro really hit the nail on the head. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with her, but Tezlyn Figaro was a part of Bernie Sanders' 2016 campaign. She had some complaints about his campaign as well as Our Revolution that I heard about later on as to why she did not sign on for 2020. That's probably why. But she had a lot of things to discuss. And there's something she says here, and we really just have to do it. She's going to tell you exactly what this really is when we talk about the squad and this term of these progressives in Congress. She's really going to break it down. Listen to this.
On January 3rd, when the next Congress will assemble, Republicans are expected to have 222 seats in the House compared to an estimated 213 seats for Democrats. A new Republican House Speaker will need to be elected, and the GOP only has 4 Republican votes to spare. Current House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy has already announced his bid for Speaker, but faces pushback from 5 members of his own party, including Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz, who said McCarthy lacks credibility across every spectrum of the GOP and is not a capable fighting force for the American people.
Representatives Ralph Norman of South Carolina and Andy Biggs of Arizona are 2 other hard no's. Bob Good of Virginia and Matt Rosendale of Montana have also voiced dissent but could still be persuaded. Joining us now to discuss is host of Straight Shot No Chaser podcast, Tezlyn Figaro. Welcome, Tezlyn.
Thank you so much. Always glad to be here.
Great to have you. So now their demands are not very specific from what I can tell, and I frankly don't quite agree that Kevin McCarthy is not, an effective advocate of conservative positions. I think he's done a good job, better job than Mitch McConnell actually, of keeping like all aspects of the conservative movement within the fold. But it is interesting to see, some Republicans actually demanding something of this would-be speaker and trying to get some kind of concessions. Something I understand is maybe a little less common, or has been in the past, not so common on the Democratic side.
Yep. So this is our transition from the Kevin McCarthy story, because they're starting off with that, about the fact that some of the members there are willing to say, no, I'm going to hold my vote unless you give us some concessions. And then some of them, like Matt Gaetz, are just like, yeah, I'm not voting for you regardless, bud.
Yeah, it's not common at all. Let's not beat around the bush. I'm an independent, so I can't, it doesn't matter what I think, who should lead the Democrat or the Republican Party, but let's just call, balls and strikes. Once again, the Republican Party is showing that at least, somebody has the fortitude to speak up and challenge and say, let's not just hand it over to just whoever they select, and let's put some demands on the table, unlike the Democrat Party and particularly progressives. Let's just call it what it is. Last year, they were very clear in starting a PAC called Team Blue, Hakeem Jeffries, to basically unseat progressives and to challenge progressives that were going against moderate seats. And
that's somebody that progressives are actually supporting. So I'm glad that she mentioned that. That is someone, Hakeem Jeffries, that progressives are actually supporting. That includes Ro Khanna too, because he issued a statement as well that he supports Hakeem Jeffries and he thinks he'll be a great choice. Meanwhile, this guy is trying to unseat progressives and prevent progressives from winning against incumbents. And they go on and cheerlead for this guy, for Hakeem Jeffries. That's how you know it's a joke. This is a joke. That would be like, I don't know, like That would be like you trying to be someone's friend that tried to get your ass fired. It's like, hey, I know you tried to get me fired, but we're cool, right? That's what that would be like. It doesn't make any sense to me. All because they have to pretty much stand along party lines. Because at the end of the day, it's not really about what's good for the people. It's not really about what's good for the individual politician. A lot of times it's what does the party want? And what the party wants usually comes first. Even if the leader of that party is screwing over other candidates and other politicians that ran grassroots campaigns like you.
Now, these same progressive leaders that all of the progressives gave your last $2 to, your last $5, crying in the stands, you know, singing as if they were the next coming of Christ, they are sitting back and saying absolutely nothing. This is the time to see who is the real leadership on the left. So shout out to Hakeem Jeffries for, let me use the words of Rick Ross, he is the biggest boss thus far. He is
I just want to say this really quick too, and then I'll go back to this part here. When she talks about the money, she's right. Like, I saw it. I saw the people who had, this is my last $10, but I'm going to give it to Bernie Sanders. This is my last $5, but I believe in you, AOC, so I'm going to donate this money to you. Ayanna Pressley, I ain't really got it like that, but let me give you this last $3 or something I got. And every time these candidates would enter a room, and I was in Ayanna Pressley's district, so I know from personal experience, every time these candidates would enter a room when they were running in 2018, people would fawn over them and people thought they were the great new hope and people really believed in them. So people gave them their last because they believed that they would fight. She talks about people crying in the stands. I saw that shit too. So I think it's just some of those people are frustrated and pissed and said, screw this, I'm not going to support them anymore. And then some of those people, they see it, they're angry, but they'll get angry at you for telling them the truth about them. Because some of them feel like a fool because they gave them their last. And I think the lesson that we can learn from this is that politicians are not saviors. They're not coming to save you. The only people that are really going to save you are the people who are in your community that you align with and you guys work together and organize together. But these politicians, they're not coming to help you, at least not on the national level. Now, local politicians can be a little bit different. You have a better chance of talking to your city councilor than you do your representative in Congress. Let's just be real. But hopefully, this is a wake-up call for people. I know it was a big wake-up call for me.
On the left. So shout out to Hakeem Jeffries for, let me use the words of Rick Ross, he is the biggest boss thus far. He is absolutely going for the leadership and nobody is saying anything at all, and they will not say anything at all. That includes Bernard and everybody that rides with Bernard. The progressives are showing once again a lack of leadership, and I know they'll say that, oh, you know, we're being strategic, but what I have come to realize that to them, strategic means being silent.
Boom, right there. So the part when she talks about strategy, this is another thing that they'll say. When you criticize them, they'll either come back with is, oh, we just got there. By the way, that's not true anymore. Or if you criticize them, they'll say, you got to understand strategy and what the strategy is. Okay. What's the strategy? Because you never hear them tell you what the strategy is. So I think she has a point when she says that the strategy is them just being silent. Yeah, because they don't say anything. They don't do anything. When Cori Bush, her office is told that they're not allowed to talk to people, what is that? What is that? And we'll hear them complain. AOC will do her Instagram videos and she'll complain and say that, oh, it's so much deception in Congress. It's so difficult in Congress. People don't know what I go through. I get so many death threats. I get death threats, boo. Did you know that? You know how many of us that do this, that get death threats because we telling you the truth? If it is that stressful for that woman. If it's that stressful, it's so painful. God, all these people after me, then why don't you just step down? But you see, she won't do that, no. Won't do that, no. Just an excuse for when people criticize. But there is no strategy. The strategy is then for this keep their mouth shut and do what they're told. They're supposed to take their marching orders. They're not supposed to really push back. They're not supposed to really lead anything. They're not supposed to disrupt the party. All they're supposed to do is take marching orders. And every now and then, they'll give them a little bit of leeway and say, okay, it's okay for you to criticize Joe Biden on this. It's all planned. All of it. The same reason why every now and then one of them is the rotating villain, and they'll be the one to push back on legislation that they know isn't going to pass any damn way, or they know is already going to pass. So this time around, it was Rashida Tlaib. That was her. She was the one that said, no, the railroad workers have a right to go on strike. So this time it's her. Next time it'll be Ilhan Omar. Maybe AOC may step in there. Jamal Bowman ain't going to do shit. We all know that's clear. Like I told you, he's the weakest link. But she's right. The strategy is being silent.
Yeah, so, we've all been alluding to this, but there was a moment 2 years ago that was described as the force the vote moment, where Democrats were in the same position Republicans are in now, where because the majority was so narrow and because you need 218 votes to confirm a speaker, the handful of squad members, the 4 to 8 of them, depending on how you count, had the power to actually hold up confirming Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House in exchange for any number of concessions, including committee appointments. We saw people like Katie Porter, who's been a very effective advocate for kind of populist economic policies, taxes on the rich, et cetera, get pushed out of the Financial Services Committee. They could have demanded all kinds of things, including a floor vote on Medicare for all, which was some of the progressives were talking about at the time. And they simply did not. They simply did not. And now when I have interviewed various progressives like Ro Khanna about whether or not they look back and have regrets, or why it is that Hakeem Jeffries is now in a position where he isn't being challenged by any progressives for leadership, they're giving the same excuse they gave 2 years ago, which is that just nobody's ready. We haven't prepared. We haven't had anybody positioning themselves in this way. And I wonder what you make of that. At a certain point, should progressives be looking to these people as leaders? At what point does it seem like almost like a planned ineptitude versus making genuine mistakes?
So Bree mentions making genuine mistakes. And here's the thing. I do want to be fair. Like the first year that they were in office, I expected them to make mistakes. Maybe even going into the second year. You're just starting. You don't know. You're trying to learn the ropes. I expected that to happen. But at this point in the game, it's become very clear to me that it's no more mistakes. These are just choices and decisions that they're making so that they can benefit their own political careers. And the rest of us just sit on the sidelines, sitting here wondering, like, why aren't you guys fighting for these issues? This is why you don't see them going to independent media anymore, because they have to know that people are not too happy with them. They have to know some of these podcasters that actually put them on the scene to begin with, because let's be real, had it not been for left independent media, I would have had no idea who Cori Bush was. I had no idea who Jamal Bowman was. I only knew about Ayanna Pressley because I was in her district. So you see the problem? They have to know that people are not happy with this. That's why you don't see them. You don't even see them go on to what? Kyle Kalinske had to be what? Bernie Sanders' probably biggest fan in the world. Have you seen Bernie Sanders go and talk to Kyle Kalinske since 2020? Do you see AOC go back on the Jimmy Dore show? Has she been back on Glenn Greenwald's show? No, but she go talk to Pod Save America, the same people who smeared Bernie Sanders' campaign. Make it make sense. The writing is on the wall. On the wall. That's why you don't see them. And people are like, why don't they? Have you guys tried to reach out to such and such and such and such? They ain't gonna come on here. They ain't gonna come on. If they won't go on to TYT, you think they gonna come on my show? The only one willing to even take the hit is Ro Khanna. He's the only one.
lot of time to plan at this point.
Yeah, let's just be clear. This is a con game. I'll go ahead and say it. It's a con game. Bottom line, progressives love talking about Democrats and moderates and, oh, you Democrats, oh, you neoliberals, you don't get it, you're just blinded. No, so are you progressives. It is a con game. They have showed you time and time again that it's been all about funneling your money up and selling you a dream. My problem is not that.
Let's hear it again, because this is important. Listen to what Tezlyn says this is.
Doing mistakes. Because they've had a lot of time to plan at this point.
Yeah, let's just be clear. This is a con game. I'll go ahead.
It's a con game. We were conned.
Go ahead and say it. It's a con game. Bottom line, progressives love talking about Democrats and moderates and, oh, you Democrats, oh, you neoliberals, you don't get it, you're just blinded. No, so are you progressives. It is a con game. They have showed you time and time again that it's been all about funneling your money up and selling you a dream. My problem is not that that I don't understand strategy. I run a strategic communications firm. I get strategy. I understand that things take time. My problem is, Bree, that they went out and lied to these people. They went out and lied to the progressive movement. They lied to folks who were poor, middle class, working class, and promised them a dream. I cannot stand a voluntary lie.
Let's pause there for just a second. That's the part that really frustrates me the most too. They took money from poor people, working class people, and some middle class people. They took, like, it's, for me, it's the people who were working class and the people who were poor, seeing the looks on their faces when Bernie Sanders came to town, seeing the looks on people's faces when, like, AOC, people who volunteered and canvassed for AOC and all of them. Nick quit his job to canvass for Bernie Sanders. Like, seeing the looks on people's faces, like, given the last that they had, and watching these politicians, these so-called progressive politicians, happily take their money and not have any care in the world, knowing that they're not doing any of those things that they ran on. They have no care in the world. Cori Bush is out here publishing books, but she ain't did shit. This is a problem. And so it's really frustrating. It's so upsetting. I saw so many people who had so much hope and so much belief and really thought that things were going to change and these were going to be the people to do it. And to see them just take money from poor people and working class people and not give two shits and ignore their constituents and pretend like these people do not exist. It's fucked up. It's wrong. And for people who will tell me, well, you are a secret right wing because you're criticizing the squad. Fuck that. I know the people who gave them their last. I know the people who waited out in the fucking cold with me and 10,000 other people to listen to Bernie Sanders at Boston Common. I know the people who were going around knocking on doors, getting people to donate, who were phone banking, getting people to donate to AOC. I know those people. None of those people are wealthy. Most of those people are not even upper middle class, barely middle class. So yes, they fucked over poor people, and I have a problem with that. And if you don't have a problem with that, chances are you probably weren't fucked over. Period.
That's Biden, who volunteered to pass to have the back of black people that nobody asked him to do, whether it is the progressives, Bernard Sanders, and everybody else that had people crying in the stands, giving their last $2, whether it is on the Trump side of selling people on hopes and dreams of some magical wall that will be paid for by Mexico. I cannot stand the volunteer lie. These people know exactly what they're doing. They're worse than the moderates because you're taking the last $2 from the poor and working class, knowing damn well that once you get in the office, you're going to flip the script. And
that's right. Thank you. Say it again. Say it again. See, this is why when we say this at RBN, yes, they are worse than the moderates. Because the moderates don't pretend to be something they're not. They don't go around telling you they're running a grassroots campaign. You know exactly who their donors are. They'll happily say, thank you, Goldman Sachs. Thank you, Wells Fargo. Nancy Pelosi ain't out here trying to pretend like she running a grassroots campaign. But these people, they went to these low income, poor neighborhoods and they took money from people. It's a hot mess.
Because you're taking the last $2 from the poor and working class, knowing damn well that once you get in the office, you're going to flip the script. And that's the problem that I have. Why not run on the truth? Why not run on the fact that saying, hey, we're going to get in, it's going to take us time. But they did not do that. They sold a hope and dream and a con game. And that is why I have such an issue with the progressive movement.
Why not run on the truth? Why not just be honest with the people and say, this is the agenda that we have. Let's be real. We're not going to be able to do changes right away, but this is the plan that we have. And this is what we hope to get done. Why did they run on this idea of we're going to get into the Democratic Party and we're going to take over everything? It's going to be a hostile takeover. And you have to remember who was in charge at that time. At that time, Donald Trump was president. So the Republican Party had the White House. It's easy to appear to be left when the president is the Republican. How left do they appear now that the president is a Democrat? How left?
I mean, why not? That is the question. What are they thinking? Are they insincere when they say they're committed to these things? Is it it's all about just raising money and then they don't particularly care about supporting a cause? Or they would say they're being more strategic than you, right? That they have some master plan that you're not privy to, or that they have a long-term plan, or there's just
they just can't defeat,
or they don't know what they've given up hope
Pelosi,
that it can work.
Yeah, crap. That's much, but it's no master plan. This is no rubbing of the hands. Oh, I got some master plan. The plan is the con game. Bottom line. This is why I keep trying to tell people it is important that you get involved on the local and the state level. As far as Congress, it's over with. It's a wrap. Get local and state leaders.
Did you guys hear that? This is what we've been telling you at RBN. As far as this is what I keep telling you, the congressional level, forget it. Chris Hedges explains this very well. Shama Sawant explains this very well. The system is fixed. It is designed a certain way unless you can change the actual system, which means getting money out of politics. This isn't going to change. This is not going to change. So she's letting you know there is no master plan. You need to focus on what you can do on the local level. And that's why I tell you guys, do you know who your city councilors are? If you don't, Google it. Find out who they are. They hold meetings in the evening usually. If you can't attend the meeting, the minutes are usually online. Talk to your city councilor because they control the budget. Talk to your mayors. A lot of them have a lot to do with the housing issues that you have. Some of them have sold out to private investors. Pay attention to that. Talk to your governor. Some of them walking around aimlessly. They don't even know what they're doing half the time or where they're coming or they're going. These are the people that you really need to get to know, and you need to organize with people that are in your community. That includes direct action, and that includes mutual aid, and that includes any type of fundraising that you can do for the better of your community. Because I'm going to let you know right now, if you're in a ballot initiative state, that includes ballot initiatives. Come January, start organizing with people so that you can get ballot initiatives getting ready for the next year on the ballot. You got to start doing that in January. Get those public banks that Roger Meadows talks about. When people say, how's the state going to fund it? You have a public bank. You ain't got to worry about that. So I think I'm hoping that more people are listening to this message about paying attention to what's happening on the local level and not so much focusing on what's happening on the congressional level, because you can do more electorally on the local level. And that's not to say that's going to be rainbows as well. There's going to be challenges that you're going to hit there as well. But I'm going to go ahead and keep it real. Shama Sawant has probably done more for people in Seattle than the squad has done for people in their districts. And Shama Sawant's on the local level. So this is what you got to do. Even Dr. King and Malcolm X, even they realized that. Before there was the civil rights movement, that started locally first. They didn't just say, all right, let's get people together and let's go march on Washington. They organized in their communities first. That's how you do it.
When I say local, I'm talking about city commissioners that have executive power to make the decisions, that can make effective change right now in your city. Get on board with folks who are running for state house, a state rep, state senate, that you have a little bit more access to, because as far as Congress is concerned, I think we're behind the ball, and it's too far gone to right the ship. Unless you have that local leadership that is putting pressure on those folks in Congress that say either you do or else, or we're going to make sure that you lose, nothing will ever change. The only thing that a politician's fear is the ability to lose their seat, period. So as long as progressives continue to keep giving their last $2 and $5, I said it last year, Brie, on your podcast, as long as they can continue to give your last $2 and $5, you're going to continue to get played, period. We can see it. Where's Bernard? Paging Bernard. Hello, Bernard, are you around? Why is Bernard not saying anything? At the end of the day, they're going to sit there, they're going to shut up, and shut out to Hakeem Jeffries for showing them exactly how it's done. And that does not mean that I'm supporting him and his policies. What it means is he is literally taking this seat, and every last one of them are saying nothing at all. They're going to sit there, they're going to take it, and they're going to like it.
Yeah, and some people have said that if they're afraid that he's actually going to be worse than Nancy Pelosi in some ways. He's very explicit about his commitments, for example, to kind of unlimited funding for Israel. He's referred to Israel as the sixth borough of New York.
This guy is really bad. Like I'm telling you guys, Hakeem Jeffries is really bad. And Tezlyn was right. They did just sit there and take it. They didn't push back on Hakeem Jeffries.
I mean, he's as you mentioned, Tezlyn, backed the super PAC that was designed to target progressives and make sure that they don't win elections. I mean, he is the final boss of progressives in a lot of ways in terms of the kind of politician you want to defeat. And for him to be kind of cruising into this leadership position without any public pushback, it seems, from the people who are supposed to be the left vanguard is perhaps not surprising, but it is disappointing to those in the left. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tezlyn. We'll have more Rising right after this.
Well said. Well said. I mean, they really hit the nail on the head. Like, again, that's someone who was a part of Bernie Sanders' campaign. So she knows. I recommend watching, if you go on YouTube, I recommend watching more videos with her, because she's had other interviews as well. I think she had an interview, with the Breakfast Club, where she talked about like her experience as well. So I think definitely check that out. I'm gonna go to some of the comments here, I think. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Scroll bar next to it, drag it down. Okay. Thanks for the super chat as well. The famous Tez laugh. They have no master plan. No, they don't. Thank you for the super chat as well, Roger. Bernie handing over email lists was ultimate betrayal. Yep. Thank you for the super chat. Vroom. Thank you for what you do. Your anger is my anger. Oh. And thank you for the super chat, Rosie. I canvassed for Bernie and he came to speak. I watched a man try to get out of his wheelchair to hold Bernie's hand. I couldn't stop thinking of him and so many in need when Bernie left his people behind. I could show you guys something. Let's see if it's still. Because I remember some of this stuff, man. Let me see if I find it. It's really sad. It's really sad. Let me see if I can find something really quick. I was going to show it to you guys if I remember correctly. Now I have too many windows open. I'm really not liking this dewy glow, you guys. Like, I'm just keeping it real. I don't know what's happening. It could just be my makeup smeared or something, but I don't like it. Did I not? I don't know if it's still there. I was trying to see because I know I hid. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'll show you something. I don't think I ever showed this on here. Let's see, I'm gonna do this. I'm looking at two things at once. Because I want to show you just how happy I was. Sorry, I was trying to look at two different things at once, but now I'm looking at the right screen. We'll see if this goes right. And then I got to get off of here because I just realized what time it is. Does this work? Yeah. Okay, let me just fast forward. I want to show you something. So I told you guys that I was at the Bernie rally here in Boston. I think I'm gonna have to mute this because at some point I have music in this, but I can put this up here. So this was the Bernie rally here in Boston. And yeah, that's the Boston Common across the street. So let me show you. I want to show you. Now, this was just the beginning of the line. Now, that was in the beginning when I got there. This just goes to show you, like I said, that was just the beginning. The line started to wrap around. And then I'm going to show you. Of course, I had to show you the porta potties. Sorry. Yeah, didn't I say the line goes all the way around? Yes, so the line went all the way around to Park Street Station. Yeah, I thought there was music on this. That's why I cut it. So then here's the crowd. Did someone ask when this was? This was 2020, Desert Mansion.
Sees it the way my generation sees it.
Bernie! Who are we? Bernie!
So I just want you to see how many people, and I'm in here well, this is me holding the camera. It was really cold. It was freezing that day. Like we got there, I think at 7:30 in the morning. He wasn't supposed to appear until, I think he was supposed to appear at like 1, but they started early. But it was cold. And so I had those little heat packs that you put in the hand warmers. Like you go like that, and you put them in your gloves. I had to put them in my boots because it was so cold. So you see all these people that stood outside waiting for Bernie Sanders, right? And that's a union rep. And then Bernie came out. You see that?
Thank you very much.
All of these people, you guys, and then I'm not gonna play this whole thing, obviously, but I'm gonna show you. I got a shot of the crowd somewhere. There it is, because I want you to see how many people were there. I gotta cut the music. I'm sorry. Right there. You see all those people? That's on the Boston Common. And that doesn't include the people on the other side, because I was only on one side of it. And then what else did I thought I got another one. Yeah. See, some of this I can't play because of the music. And that's all the people leaving Boston Common. All the people leaving Boston. Look at all those people. You see that? It was over 10,000 people there. That was my first vlog. First vlog that I ever did was the Bernie Sanders rally. That's right, Bryce. We were so excited about that. Exactly. That's why it's hilarious to me when people are like, oh, you're being a secret right wing. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? No, but we will criticize Bernie Sanders. I will criticize any politician because I'm not a hero, a politician worshiper. I don't worship politicians, and you shouldn't worship them either. That's the problem. That's the problem. This video, it's still on my channel, but I think I had to make it private because of the music. That's the other thing, the music. And I thought I used non-copyright music too. But yeah, first vlog ever did, and I did it with my cell phone. So yeah, once upon a time, we were all really excited. So that's just hilarious to me when people make that statement. Now, speaking of excitement, if you have not heard, if you're in the Boston area, Joe Biden will be here tomorrow. I believe Kate and William are already here, but I think they're going to be here tomorrow too. So that's Prince William and Kate are here, but Joe Biden's going to be here, and there's supposed to be a protest scheduled against Joe Biden. Now, this is coming from Boston DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. Picket Biden and support railroad workers. This is tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. and it ends at 1:30 p.m. It's at the JFK Presidential Library and Museum. Word of advice, take an Uber or take your car. It is not easy to get to by public transportation. Not the easiest. There's the JFK UMass T, but then you still got to get over to the library part. So just a bit of advice. JFK Presidential Library and Museum. Again, this is hosted by Boston DSA. Picket Biden for paid sick days and railroad workers' right to strike. Tomorrow, you guys. I would be there if I could, but unfortunately with the time, I can't make that time, the 11:30 time, because I thought about it and I could go there and stream it, but unfortunately I have something else at that time. But join railroad workers, DSA, union members, and other supporters at 11:30 a.m. Friday, December 2nd at JFK Library to support railroad workers' right to strike. So if you have the time to do that tomorrow, again, they're going to be at the JFK Library at UMass Boston in Dorchester. So that's on the corner of University Drive North and Columbia Point, across from the Edward Kennedy Institute. If you have to take public transportation, take the MBTA Red Line to JFK UMass Boston, then take the shuttle bus to Campus Center. So if you have no plans tomorrow morning, check that out. Corey, can we put the link to this in the chat? They're asking people to RSVP if you're going to attend, and I think that's for head count purposes. Otherwise, I would be there. Terry said not standing in the cold. Sorry. Oh, Terry. You know, I've been in the cold so many times because I've done cold football games and cold baseball games and cold protests and rallies. So yeah, definitely check that out, you guys. Again, that's Boston DSA chapter that's doing that. Check it out. They're going to be protesting against President Biden. So give it a whirl. All right, guys. Other than that, it is past my time. If you haven't had a chance, if you haven't had a chance to do so, I've lived in Boston too long. If you haven't had a chance to do so, sign up for my newsletter that's pinned to the top of the chat. That way you'll get an alert every time I go live. And you don't have to rely on that YouTube notification, which sometimes I don't even get. But check that out. Call-in will be tomorrow, Rodrigo. Tomorrow will be call-in. So if you have any questions about tonight, save that for tomorrow as well. And other than that, I am out. I'm not feeling this tonight. I don't know what's going on with the dew. I got to get out of here. My face is dewy and my hair is doing this thing. All right. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.